The silent species. The Galactic Council chambers stretched 3 kilometers in diameter, a monument to 10,000 years of interstellar civilization. Representative Cathis of the Vorn Collective adjusted his crystalline sensory array as he watched the latest petition scroll across the holographic display. Another species requesting admission. Another disappointment waiting to happen. The humans, announced Chancellor Vrax, her 4 arms gesturing with practiced authority. From the 3rd planet of System Sol 3. They claim to meet the qualifications for council membership. A ripple of clicking mandibles echoed through the chamber. The insectoid delegates of the Zithrak swarm exchanged pheromone signals that translated to amusement. Cathis himself felt his dermal chromatophores shift to a pale blue, the Vorn equivalent of skepticism. Another carbon-based species, muttered Ambassador Thren of the Molten Hegemony, his magma-veined form pulsing with orange light. How many failed petitions does this make? 17? 18? 19? Cathis corrected, accessing the database with a thought. Though none in the past 3 millennia have survived first contact protocols long enough to even reach petition stage. The human's representative materialized in the projection field. A female, if Cathis understood their binary biological system correctly. She wore a simple dark suit, her brown skin composed, her eyes sharp and calculating. Her name was listed as Ambassador Nalani Chin. Honorable Council members, she began, her voice steady despite the translation matrix. Humanity requests consideration for membership in the Galactic Council. We have achieved faster-than-light travel, established colonies on 7 worlds, and maintained peaceful governance across our system for 2 centuries. Chancellor Vrax's primary eyes focused on the human while her secondary pair scanned the data. Your achievements are noted, Ambassador Chin. However, membership in the Council requires more than technological advancement. It requires understanding of the universal laws of survival. We understand, Chin replied. We have studied your laws extensively. Cathis felt his chromatophores shift to deeper blue. They always said that. They never truly understood. Then you comprehend, Vrax continued, that council membership demands adherence to the doctrine of appropriate response. When threatened, species must respond with precisely calculated force. No more, no less. Excessive response leads to galactic instability. Insufficient response invites extinction. We comprehend the doctrine, Chin confirmed. You also understand, added Ambassador Thren, his voice like grinding stones, that the Council has existed for 10,000 years because we follow these laws without deviation. Species that cannot adapt to this reality do not survive their probationary period. Chin's face remained neutral. We are prepared for the probationary requirements. Cathis accessed the humans' file. Their planet had endured numerous conflicts throughout their recorded history. Wars fought with increasingly devastating weapons. Their survival instinct seemed unrefined, brutal even. Like most young species, they would likely fail within the first cycle. Very well, Chancellor Vrax announced. Humanity is granted probationary status. You will be assigned a council liaison and given standard territorial rights. Your compliance with universal laws will be monitored. The probationary period begins immediately and will last 10 standard cycles. As Chen's image faded, Cathis felt a familiar resignation settle over him. Another species would learn the hard way that survival in the galaxy required control, calculation, and strict adherence to precedent. Humanity's petition would end like all the others. With their territory absorbed, their species reduced to client status under a stronger civilization's protection. He had seen it dozens of times. The pattern never changed. What Cathis didn't know, as he filed the human petition away, was that humanity had never been particularly good at following patterns. The first test. 6 weeks into humanity's probationary period, the first test arrived. Cathis received the alert while reviewing trade agreements in his quarters aboard the Council station. A human colony on Kepler 442b had detected unauthorized vessels entering their system. The ships belonged to the Razak Marauders, a loose confederation of pirates that the Council tolerated in limited numbers. They served a purpose, testing new species' adherence to appropriate response protocols. The Razak understood the game. They would probe, threaten, and occasionally raid. The proper response was to repel them with exactly enough force to discourage further attacks while avoiding escalation. Mathematical precision was required. Destroy too few ships and the Razak would return with greater numbers. Destroy too many, and the Council would view the species as dangerously aggressive. Cathis pulled up the human colony's defensive capabilities. 3 orbital defense platforms, 18 patrol corvettes, and a single frigate stationed at the edge of the system. Standard colonial defenses. The Razak had sent 12 raiding vessels, a typical probing force. The mathematics were straightforward. Humanity should destroy 3 Razak ships and damage 4 more, leaving 5 intact to retreat. This would demonstrate strength while maintaining proportionality. Any species that had studied Council laws would understand this calculation. Cathis settled in to observe the encounter, fully expecting humanity to fail. They were too young, too volatile. They would either cower and lose the colony, or overreact and eliminate the entire Razak force, marking themselves as uncontrollable. The Razak ships entered attack range. Their weapons powered up, targeting the orbital defense platforms. Standard doctrine: disable defenses, then land forces to plunder the colony. The human response came faster than Cathis expected. All 18 corvettes accelerated toward the Razak vessels at maximum burn. The platforms rotated their main batteries toward the attackers. The frigate moved to intercept the Razak flagship. Then something unexpected happened. The human commander transmitted on all frequencies, the message translated instantly by the Council's monitoring systems. Razak vessels, you are in violation of human territorial space. Power down your weapons and prepare to be escorted out of the system, or you will be fired upon. Cathis chromatophores flashed bright yellow. Surprise. The humans were offering the Razak a chance to retreat? That wasn't part of the standard response calculation. The Razak never retreated without a show of force. Every species knew this. The Razak commander's response was predictable: weapons fire. 3 plasma torpedoes streaked toward the nearest human platform. What happened next made Cathis rise from his chair. The human ships didn't calculate proportional response. They didn't engage in the careful dance of measured force. Instead, every human vessel opened fire simultaneously with what appeared to be their full weapons capacity. The corvettes swarmed the Razak ships like angry insects, their kinetic accelerators creating a devastating crossfire. The platforms unleashed their main batteries. The frigate's missiles filled space with explosive light. But the humans weren't trying to destroy the Razak fleet. They were disabling it. Precision fire took out engines, weapons systems, communications arrays. Within 90 seconds, all 12 Razak ships were drifting hulks, their crews alive but completely helpless. Not a single Razak vessel destroyed. Not a single Razak casualty. Then the human commander transmitted again: Razak vessels, your ships will be tractored to the edge of the system. Your crews will be provided with emergency supplies and communications equipment. Tell whoever sent you that human space is defended. Tell them we gave you a choice. Tell them we'll always give you a choice. The transmission ended. The human ships began the methodical work of towing the disabled Razak vessels out of their territory. Cathis stared at his display, his chromatophores cycling through colors he didn't have names for. The humans had violated the doctrine of appropriate response, but they hadn't truly violated it. They had used overwhelming force, but they had shown restraint. They had disabled enemies that by all rights they should have destroyed, yet they had demonstrated undeniable capability. The mathematics didn't fit any established model. Across the galaxy, on 600 Council worlds, representatives watched the same recording. The analysis began immediately. Emergency sessions were called. The humans had done something none of them had seen before. They had rewritten the equation of appropriate response while still technically achieving the acceptable outcome. In the depths of Razak territory, clan leaders watched the recording with very different eyes. Their test force had been humiliated but not destroyed. Imprisoned but then released. Defeated but left alive to spread the story. The message was clear: humanity fought differently than the galaxy expected. And in her office aboard the human diplomatic vessel Covenant, Ambassador Nalani Chen allowed herself a small smile. The first test had gone exactly as humanity's military strategists had planned. The Council had expected them to play by the old rules. Humanity was about to teach the galaxy that survival had more than one mathematical solution. The Council's calculation. The emergency session of the Galactic Council was called 24 hours after the Kepler 442b incident. Cathis materialized in his assigned chamber pod, watching as hundreds of representatives flickered into existence around the circular amphitheater. The ambient tension was palpable even through the holographic interface. Chancellor Vrax's 4 arms remained perfectly still, a sign Cathis recognized as carefully controlled agitation. We are here to address the human response to the Razak incursion. Representative Cathis, your analysis? Cathis felt his dermal chromatophores shift to formal purple as he accessed his prepared data. The humans violated protocol and methodology while achieving an acceptable outcome. They used overwhelming force, but exercised extreme restraint in application. The Razic force was neutralized without casualties, which technically satisfies the non-escalation requirement. However, their approach suggests a fundamental misunderstanding of calculated response doctrine. Or, interrupted Ambassador Thren, his magma veins pulsing brighter, it suggests they understand something we don't. A shocked silence rippled through the chamber. Thren was one of the Council's oldest members, representing a species that had held their seat for 8,000 years. For him to suggest the humans might possess superior understanding was almost heretical. Explain, Vrax commanded. Thren's form shifted, heat waves distorting the air around his holographic projection. For 10,000 years, we have maintained order through the doctrine of appropriate response. Every species that joins the Council learns to calculate force mathematically. 3 ships destroyed here. 5 ships damaged there. We have created a galaxy where violence is predictable, and predictability brings stability. That is our strength, agreed Counselor ZYX of the Zithrak swarm, his insectoid body clicking with approval. Is it? Thren challenged. Or is it our limitation? The humans showed the Razic overwhelming capability, gave them no chance to counter, yet chose not to kill them. They removed the threat without creating martyrs. They demonstrated power without requiring destruction. By our calculations, they should have killed 3 or 4 Razic ships. Instead, they humiliated 12 vessels and sent their crews home alive to spread the story. Cathis felt his chromatophores flickering uncertainly. You're suggesting the humans achieved a superior outcome? I'm suggesting, Thren replied, that the humans understand something about survival that we have forgotten in our 10,000 years of calculated violence. They understand that the greatest victory is the one that doesn't require you to kill your enemy. Philosophical speculation, snapped Ambassador Korath of the Serpentine Dominion, her scales rippling with disdain. The Razic will return with greater force. The humans have shown weakness disguised as mercy. They will pay for this mistake. Will they? Vrax's voice cut through the debate. I have received reports from our intelligence network. The Razic clans are in chaos. Some call for revenge. Others argue that attacking humanity is too costly. Still others want to establish trade relations with a species powerful enough to defeat them but merciful enough to let them live. The humans have created division in a force that has operated with unified purpose for 6 centuries. Cathis pulled up the intelligence reports, his analytical mind racing through the implications. The Razic marauders had been a constant problem for the Council, but a manageable one. They raided, species responded with calculated force, equilibrium was maintained. But now that equilibrium was disrupted. The humans had introduced a variable the Council had never accounted for, the strategic value of mercy. This changes nothing, Korath insisted. The humans are in their probationary period. If they cannot learn our ways, they will fail. Perhaps this is simply a different path to the same end. Perhaps, Vrax agreed, though her tone suggested doubt. We will continue observation. But I want analysis teams assigned to study human history, human philosophy, human methods of conflict resolution. If they are rewriting the laws of survival, we need to understand why. As the session ended and the holograms began to fade, Cathis found himself accessing humanity's historical database. He scrolled through millennia of human conflict, looking for patterns. What he found disturbed him. Humanity had a word they used repeatedly throughout their history: escalation. They seemed obsessed with avoiding it. Their military doctrines, their diplomatic strategies, even their legal systems were designed around the principle of measured response, but with a critical difference from Council methodology. Where the Council calculated exact mathematical force, humans calculated psychological impact. They didn't ask, how many ships must I destroy to achieve equilibrium? They asked, how can I end this conflict with the minimum destruction necessary to prevent future conflicts? It was a subtle distinction. But as Cathis reviewed the Kepler 442b incident again, he realized it was a profound one. The humans hadn't violated the spirit of the doctrine of appropriate response. They had evolved it. And if one probationary species could evolve a 10,000-year-old doctrine in their first test, what else might humanity teach the galaxy about survival? The question kept Cathis awake through his rest cycle, his chromatophores flickering colors he'd never displayed before. The color of uncertainty. The color of change. The Razic's choice. The Razic clanhold of Torex Prime hung in the dark between stars, a massive asteroid converted into a fortress and shipyard. Inside its carved halls, Warlord Kraith faced a problem that no previous warlord had encountered in 600 years of Razak expansion. His warriors were divided. "They humiliated us," roared clan leader Vexith, slamming his four-fingered fist against the stone table. "They took 12 ships without destroying a single one. Our warriors were dragged out of their own territory like disobedient cubs. We must respond with overwhelming force." "To what end?" countered clan leader Sarix, her scarred face thoughtful. "They could have killed all our warriors. 216 lives they spared. That is not weakness. That is confidence." Kraith watched the debate with growing frustration. He had ruled the Razak Confederation for 32 cycles, maintaining power through a careful balance of aggression and pragmatism. The council tolerated the Razak because they were predictable. They raided. Species responded. The Razak retreated or persisted based on mathematical calculations of profit versus loss. The humans had broken that calculation. "Show me the recording again," Kraith commanded. The holographic display activated, showing the battle from multiple angles. Kraith had watched it 17 times now. Each viewing revealed new details. The precision of the human weapons fire. The coordination of their ships. The speed of their response. And most unsettling, the deliberate targeting of non-critical systems. The humans had known exactly where to shoot to disable without destroying. That level of precision required extensive knowledge of Razak ship design. Which meant the humans had been preparing for this encounter long before the Razak ships entered their system. "They were ready for us," Kraith muttered. "This wasn't a defensive response. This was a trap." Silence fell over the council chamber. The implications were staggering. "Impossible," Vexith protested. "No species prepares that extensively for Razak raids. We're pirates, not an invasion force. The council species repel us with minimal effort and move on." "Perhaps that's why we've never truly grown stronger," Sarix said quietly. "We raid. They repel. We retreat. We raid again. For 600 years, we've been playing the council's game by the council's rules. The humans refuse to play." Kraith stood, his massive frame casting shadows in the dim light. "Show me the humans' final transmission." The recording played again. "Tell whoever sent you that human space is defended. Tell them we gave you a choice. Tell them we'll always give you a choice." A choice. That word stuck in Kraith's mind like a weapon embedded in flesh. The council species never gave choices. They calculated. They responded. They maintained equilibrium. But the humans offered something the Razak had never encountered before. An alternative. "What if," Kraith began slowly, "we sent an envoy?" The chamber erupted in protest. Razak didn't send envoys. Razak took what they wanted or retreated to strike elsewhere. Diplomacy was for the weak, the civilized, the controlled species that lived under council rule. Kraith raised his hand for silence. "Listen to me. We have raided council space for 6 centuries. We are tolerated because we are predictable. But we are also limited. We control 17 asteroid bases and perhaps 500 ships across all clans. Meanwhile, the council controls thousands of systems." "Why?" "Because they are weak," Vexith growled. "They hide behind their laws and calculations. They have forgotten how to truly fight." "Have they?" Kraith challenged. "Or have they learned something we haven't? The humans defeated 12 of our ships without killing a single warrior. Then they sent our people home to tell the story. That is not weakness. That is strategy." Sarix leaned forward. "You believe they were sending us a message? Not just a warning?" "I believe," Kraith said carefully, "they were giving us exactly what they promised. A choice. We can continue raiding, knowing they will defeat us without killing us. Or we can choose something different." "Trade?" Vexith spat the word like poison. "You would have the Razak become merchants?" "I would have the Razak survive," Kraith replied. "And perhaps thrive. The humans are wealthy. Their colonies produce valuable resources. They have technology we have never seen. What if we could acquire those resources through trade rather than theft? What if we could learn their methods? Their precision? Their restraint combined with overwhelming capability?" The chamber fell silent. Kraith could see the internal struggle on every face. 600 years of raiding culture warred with the pragmatic realization that humanity represented something new. Something that didn't fit the old patterns. "If we send an envoy," Sarix said slowly, "and the humans execute them, we will have shown weakness. The other clans will tear us apart." "Yes," Kraith agreed. "But if the humans honor their word about always giving us a choice, then we learn something valuable. We learn that there might be a different way to survive in this galaxy than by following the council's rules. He looked around the chamber, meeting each clan leader's eyes. The council has maintained order for 10,000 years through calculated violence. The humans defeated us in 90 seconds while giving us a choice. Which approach seems more powerful to you? The vote was close. 11 clans for sending an envoy. 9 against. But it was enough. 3 days later, a single Razak scout ship entered human space broadcasting a message on all frequencies. We accept your offer of choice. We wish to speak. And aboard the Covenant, Ambassador Nalani Chin smiled for the second time since arriving in council space. The strategy was working. Humanity wasn't just teaching the galaxy a new way to fight. They were teaching the galaxy a new reason not to fight at all. The impossible alliance. Ambassador Chin stood in the conference room of humanity's newest orbital station, Aurora's Gate, watching the Razak delegation's ship approach. Beside her, Admiral Marcus Okonkwo frowned at his tactical display. I still say this is a mistake, the Admiral muttered. We should have destroyed their fleet. Sent a clear message. We sent a very clear message, Chin replied. We just sent a different one than the galaxy expected. The council is watching, Okonkwo warned. Cathis has already filed 3 inquiry reports about our unorthodox diplomatic methods. If this goes wrong, we'll deal with it, Chin interrupted. But if it goes right, Admiral, we'll have accomplished something no council species has managed in 10,000 years. The Razak ship docked with practiced precision. Chin had to admire that. Pirates they might be, but their pilots knew their craft. The airlock cycled, and 4 Razak warriors entered, led by a scarred female who moved with the controlled grace of a trained fighter. I am clan leader Sarix, the Razak announced, her translator rendering her clicking speech into fluid English. Warlord Kraith has sent me to discuss your offer of choice. Chin gestured to the conference table. Please sit. Can we offer refreshment? Sarix's eyes narrowed, but she took a seat, her warriors flanking her. You show no fear. Should I? Chin asked calmly. You came here under a truce flag. If you intended violence, you would have brought more ships. A rasping sound emerged from Sarix's throat. Chen's cultural database identified it as Razak laughter. The council species would have surrounded this station with warships. They would have sent negotiators via hologram from a safe distance. You sit across from me with 4 guards who would die in seconds if we attacked. Yes, Chin agreed. But you won't attack because you're not here for violence. You're here because you're curious. Sarix leaned back in her chair. Curious? That is an interesting word. Tell me, Ambassador, why did you not destroy our ships? Chin had prepared for this question. The answer was critical. Because destroying you would have solved one problem while creating others. We would have removed 12 ships from your fleet, but we would have turned 216 warriors into martyrs. Your people would have been honor-bound to avenge them. More raids would follow. More violence. More death. The cycle would continue. So you chose mercy out of pragmatism? We chose strategic thinking over traditional response. There's a concept in human military philosophy. Winning without fighting is the highest form of victory. Sarix's translator struggled with that phrase, repeating it several times. Winning without fighting. The council has no such concept. They calculate violence. They measure response. They maintain equilibrium through constant, predictable force. And in 10,000 years, Chin said quietly, has the galaxy grown more peaceful? The question hung in the air. Sarix exchanged glances with her warriors before responding. No. The strong dominate. The weak submit. Pirates like the Razak exist in the margins. The council maintains order, but order is not peace. Exactly. Chin leaned forward. The council has created a stable galaxy, but they've also created a static one. Every species knows its place. Every conflict follows predictable patterns. Nothing changes. Nothing evolves. And humanity wants to change this? Humanity wants to survive, Chin corrected. But we learned something during our own history. Survival through dominance is temporary. Survival through cooperation is sustainable. Admiral Okonkwo stirred beside her but remained silent. Chin knew he disagreed with parts of this approach, but he trusted her judgment. That trust was itself a form of human strategic thinking. Empowering your experts while maintaining oversight. Sarix studied Chin with new interest. You speak of cooperation with pirates. The council would consider this alliance with criminals. The council considers you criminals because you violate their established order, Chin replied. We consider you survivors who have adapted to the system you were born into. The question is, would you like to survive differently? What are you offering? Chen activated the holographic display, showing trade routes, resource extraction sites, technological schematics. Humanity is rich in resources but poor in distribution networks. You're experienced navigators who know the space between council territories. We're offering trade contracts. Legal trade. You transport our goods, we pay you fairly. You teach us the hidden routes, we share our technology. You would make merchants of warriors? I would make partners of survivors, Chen said. You'll still fly your ships. You'll still travel dangerous routes. You'll still face threats and challenges. The difference is you'll be building something instead of just taking from it. One of Sarix's warriors spoke for the first time, his voice harsh. The other clans will call us weak. Collaborators with council species. Let them, Sarix said thoughtfully. Until they see the resources we gain. Until they see our ships upgraded with human technology. Until they realize that partnership with humanity provides more security and wealth than 600 years of raiding ever did. Chin allowed herself an internal smile. Sarix understood. We're not asking you to abandon your culture. We're offering you a way to strengthen it through cooperation rather than conflict. And if other clans continue to raid your space? Then we'll defeat them without killing them, offer them the same choice and let them decide. Some will accept. Some will refuse. Either way we'll have changed the calculation. The Razik will no longer be a unified threat. You'll be a divided force with some clans having a stake in protecting our space rather than raiding it. Sarix's eyes widened. You're weaponizing cooperation. Using alliance to divide your enemies. We're offering genuine partnership while accepting that not everyone will take it, Chin clarified. Yes, it divides those who might oppose us. But it also creates authentic relationships with those who choose to work with us. Both outcomes serve humanity's interests. For a long moment, Sarix said nothing. Then she stood and her warriors tensed. But instead of violence, Sarix placed her hand over her heart in a gesture Chen's database identified as a Razik mark of respect. I will take your offer to Warlord Kraith. But I already know his answer. The Torex clan will accept. As the Razik delegation departed, Admiral Okonkwo shook his head in amazement. You just turned pirates into allies in one conversation. The council is going to lose their minds. The council is going to learn, Chin replied, that the laws of survival they've followed for 10,000 years aren't the only laws that exist. Humanity survived our violent history by learning to cooperate. Now we're teaching that lesson to the galaxy. And if the council doesn't want to learn? Chen looked out at the stars, where human colonies were spreading, where new partnerships were forming, where the old order was beginning to crack. Then they'll learn anyway. Because survival isn't about following the rules. It's about adapting when the rules no longer serve you. In his chambers aboard the council station, Representative Kathis watched the recording of the Chinsarix meeting with growing alarm. His chromatophores cycled through a rainbow of conflicted colors. The humans had done it again. They'd rewritten another equation. This time they'd solved a problem that had vexed the council for centuries, not by eliminating it but by transforming it into an asset. Kathis drafted his report to Chancellor Vrax with hands that trembled slightly. The message was clear. Humanity wasn't just adapting to council laws. They were creating entirely new ones. The fracture. 6 months into humanity's probationary period, the Galactic Council faced a crisis unlike any in its 10,000-year history. 17 Razik clans had accepted humanity's partnership agreements. The Torex clan now operated 3 major shipping routes through human space, their ships upgraded with human defensive technology. Former raiders had become contractors, earning more in 6 months of legal trade than they had in 6 years of piracy. The remaining Razik clans, led by the militant Vexith Confederation, had attacked human colonies twice more. Each time, the humans had disabled the attacking forces with minimal casualties and offered the same choice: trade or continue being defeated. 3 more clans switched sides after the second engagement. This should have been cause for celebration. Humanity had reduced piracy, created new trade opportunities, and demonstrated a replicable model for conflict resolution. Instead, the council chamber rippled with tension as Chancellor Vrax called the assembly to order. The human methodology, Vrax announced, her 4 arms gesturing with barely controlled frustration, has created an unprecedented situation. For the first time in council history, a criminal organization has been partially legitimized through formal alliance with a member species. Probationary member, Ambassador Korath corrected sharply. They have not completed their evaluation period. This is exactly why we have such periods, to identify species whose methods threaten established order. Representative Cathis felt his chromatophores shifting to dark purple. He had spent the past months studying humanity's approach, and he could no longer maintain his skepticism. The humans had achieved something remarkable. But remarkable did not mean acceptable to the council. Honored Chancellor, Cathis spoke, his voice carefully measured, I request permission to present analysis of long-term implications. Vrax's primary eyes focused on him. Proceed. Cathis activated his data display, showing trend projections across multiple timelines. If humanity's model continues, we project 43% reduction in piracy within 3 cycles. Trade volume in formerly unstable regions increases by 67%. Colonial expansion becomes viable in areas previously considered too dangerous. By every measurable metric, humanity's approach produces superior outcomes. Then what? Demanded Ambassador Thren, his magma veins pulsing bright orange. Is the problem? The problem, interjected Councillor Zwax of the Zithrak swarm, his insectoid body clicking with agitation, is that their success undermines 10,000 years of established protocol. If humanity's methods work better than Council doctrine, what does that say about our doctrine? Silence fell over the chamber. Cathis felt the weight of unspoken truth. The Council had maintained order through predictable, calculated response. Every species knew the rules. Every conflict followed established patterns. It was stable. It was safe. It was also stagnant. The humans are rewriting the laws of survival, Cathis said quietly, and proving that their laws work better than ours. That is the problem. Not that they're failing, but that they're succeeding. Unacceptable, Korith hissed. If we allow one probationary species to ignore established doctrine, we invite chaos. Others will follow. The order we have maintained for millennia will fracture. It's already fracturing, Thren rumbled. 3 council species have approached humanity requesting similar partnership models for their own territorial disputes. The Meridian Collective wants human advisors to help resolve their border conflicts. Even some Zithrak colonies are studying human conflict resolution methods. Councillor Zyx's clicking intensified. My people study many things. It doesn't mean we approve of abandoning proven doctrine. Proven? Thren's heat signature spiked. Proven to maintain equilibrium, yes. But proven to improve? Proven to evolve? The humans have been in council space for 6 months and they've already reduced piracy more effectively than we have in 6 centuries. Because they're naive, Korith argued. They haven't learned the hard lessons we've learned over millennia. Their mercy will be exploited. Their partnerships will collapse. We've seen it before with young species who thought they could change the galaxy. Have we? Cathis interjected, surprising himself with his boldness. Or have we simply refused to let them try? Every species that enters the council is forced to adapt to our methods. Those who can't are relegated to client status. We call it maintaining order. But perhaps we've been maintaining stagnation. Chancellor Vrax's 4 arms moved in a gesture that demanded silence. Representative Cathis, your analysis is noted. But understand what you're suggesting. If we allow humanity's approach to continue, we're not just accepting one species' methods. We're acknowledging that our fundamental doctrine may be flawed. The political implications are staggering. And if we force them to comply? Cathis challenged. We'll be proving that the Council fears change more than it values results. That our laws exist to preserve power structure rather than achieve optimal outcomes. That is dangerously close to sedition, Representative. That is honest analysis, Chancellor. The chamber erupted in debate. Factions formed rapidly. The traditionalists, led by Korith, demanded humanity be required to abandon their partnerships and follow established doctrine or face expulsion from probationary status. The progressives, a smaller group led surprisingly by Thren, argued for allowing the human experiment to continue. Cathis found himself in the middle, his analytical nature forcing him to see both perspectives. The Council had maintained peace for 10,000 years through careful control. But humanity had achieved unprecedented results through strategic flexibility. The vote was called. Humanity would be required to dissolve their Razic partnerships and demonstrate adherence to traditional doctrine within 30 days, or their probationary status would be revoked. The decision passed by a narrow margin. As the chamber cleared, Thren approached Cathis. You spoke well, the ancient ambassador said. But you still voted with the traditionalists. I voted for stability, Cathis replied, though his chromatophores flickered with uncertainty. Change is dangerous when it's too rapid. And stagnation is fatal when it's too prolonged, Thren countered. We'll see which danger proves greater. On Aurora's gate station, Ambassador Qin received the Council's ultimatum with calm acceptance. Admiral Okonkwo looked ready to start a war. "They're forcing us to choose," the Admiral said. "Abandon our allies or leave the Council." "No," Qin replied, a slight smile on her face. "They're giving us an opportunity." "An opportunity for what?" "To show them that humanity doesn't just rewrite the laws of survival," Qin said. "We teach others to rewrite them too." She opened a communications channel to Warlord Kraith, to the Meridian Collective, to every species that had approached humanity in the past 6 months. The message was simple. The Council has demanded we choose between their laws and our partnerships. We choose our partnerships. Because humanity learned long ago that laws are made by people, and when laws no longer serve survival, people change them. The galaxy is about to learn the same lesson. The New Order. The crisis came to a head 32 days after the Council's ultimatum, in a way that no one had predicted. Representative Cathis materialized in the Emergency Council session to find chaos. Normally composed delegates shouted across the chamber. Holographic displays flickered with conflicting data. And at the center of it all, Chancellor Vrax stood with all 4 arms raised, desperately trying to restore order. "What happened?" Cathis asked the nearest delegate, a crystalline observer from the outer rim. "The humans happened," the delegate replied, his faceted body refracting light in patterns that suggested awe. "They held a conference. Invited every species that had approached them. And they created something entirely new." Cathis accessed the data stream, and his chromatophores went completely transparent with shock, a Vorn biological response he'd never experienced before. The humans hadn't just refused the Council's ultimatum. They'd responded by creating an alternative. The Cooperative Alliance for Interspecies Progress. CIP. 23 species had signed the founding charter. Not just the Razak clans but legitimate council members including the Meridian Collective, several Zithrak colonies, and, most shockingly, 3 of the Molten Hegemony's outer territories. Ambassador Thren himself had signed as a representative of the Hegemony's progressive faction. The charter was elegant in its simplicity. Member species would maintain their council memberships but would also commit to alternative conflict resolution methods based on human principles. Measured response combined with strategic cooperation, force as a last resort rather than a first calculation, partnership over domination. It wasn't a rebellion. It was evolution. "This is precisely what we feared," Ambassador Korath hissed, her scales rippling with anger. "The humans have fractured council unity. They've created a competing power structure." "Or," suggested Thren, his form appearing in the chamber with perfect timing, "they've created what the Council should have become millennia ago. A structure that values adaptation over tradition." "You betray your own people," Korath accused. "I serve my people by ensuring their survival in a changing galaxy," Thren countered. "The humans proved their methods work. In 6 months they achieved what we couldn't in centuries. I'm done watching the hegemony stagnate because we're afraid to evolve." Chancellor Vrax finally established order, her voice carrying authority that silenced the debate. "Ambassador Qin, you will explain yourself." The human ambassador materialized in the center of the chamber, looking smaller than Cathis remembered, yet somehow more commanding. "Honored Chancellor, humanity has not violated any council law. We remain committed to our probationary status. The Cooperative Alliance operates independently of council authority. You were ordered to dissolve your partnerships." "We were given an ultimatum," Qin corrected gently. "Ultimatums assume only 2 options exist. Humanity has always been skilled at finding third options." "You're creating a rival government?" Korath accused. "We're creating a voluntary association of species who want to try different methods," Qin replied. "Any council member can join. Any member can leave. It's not a rival, it's an alternative. Competition if you will. You believe your methods are superior and you may be right. But if you are, you should welcome the comparison." The logic was infuriating in its simplicity. Cathis watched the council representatives struggle with the implications. Qin had maneuvered them into a position where opposing CIP meant admitting they feared competition. Supporting it meant accepting that council methods might not be optimal. "What happens," Vrax asked carefully, "when CIP methods conflict with council doctrine?" "Then we evaluate the results," Qin said. "Science has a concept called controlled experimentation. You don't know which method works better until you test them both. For 10,000 years the Council has followed one approach. Give humanity's approach time to prove itself. If we're wrong the evidence will show it. If we're right." She paused meaningfully. Then perhaps the council learns something valuable. And if your methods lead to catastrophe? Then we'll take responsibility, Chen acknowledged. But consider this, Chancellor. In 6 months, humanity has reduced piracy, increased trade, resolved 3 territorial disputes, and created partnerships across former enemy lines. The catastrophe isn't in our methods, it's in refusing to consider that survival might have more than one solution. Cathis found himself activating his communication request before consciously deciding to speak. When Vrax recognized him, his words surprised even himself. I request permission to join CIP as an observer. The chamber erupted again. A Vorn representative joining a human initiative? It was unprecedented. It was probably career suicide. But Cathis had spent 6 months analyzing humanity's approach, and he could no longer deny the data. Their methods worked. Representative Cathis, Vrax said slowly, you understand that this could compromise your position on the council? I understand that my position on the council is to provide accurate analysis, Cathis replied, his chromatophores settling into steady gold, the Vorn color of conviction. I cannot analyze human methods fairly while refusing to observe them directly. If the council's ways are truly superior, observation of alternatives will only prove it. If they're not. He let the implication hang in the air. Over the next hours the debate raged. But the conclusion was inevitable. The council couldn't force CIP to dissolve without proving Chen's point about fearing competition. They couldn't prevent species from joining without openly admitting their methods couldn't withstand comparison. The compromise was reached near dawn. CIP would be recognized as a legitimate alliance operating within council space. Humanity's probationary period would continue under modified terms. They would be evaluated not just on adherence to existing doctrine, but on the effectiveness of their alternative approach. It was the first time in 10,000 years that the council had officially acknowledged that their way might not be the only way. 3 standard years later, Representative Cathis stood in what was now called the Joint Council Chambers, a new facility built to house both traditional council sessions and CIP assemblies. The building's dual architecture symbolized the galaxy's new reality. 2 systems operating in parallel, learning from each other, occasionally conflicting but ultimately strengthening both. Ambassador Chen found him studying a holographic display showing comparative data. Impressive numbers, Cathis said, gesturing to the statistics. Piracy down 78% in CIP territories. Trade up 112%. Colonial expansion in previously unstable regions exceeds all projections. And in traditional council space? Chen asked. Also improving, Cathis admitted, his chromatophores showing grudging respect. Apparently, having competition motivated several council species to refine their own methods. The Serpentine Dominion adopted modified human protocols last month. Even Ambassador Korath, though she'd never admit it publicly. Chen smiled. That was always the point. Not to replace the council but to force evolution. Stagnant systems die. Competitive systems adapt. You really planned this from the beginning, didn't you? The Razik incident, the partnerships, the ultimatum, you predicted how we'd respond and maneuvered us into a position where we had to change or admit defeat. We planned for multiple possibilities, Chen acknowledged. But yes, we understood that the council's greatest weakness was its certainty. 10,000 years of success had made you inflexible. You needed proof that alternatives could work. And humanity needed to survive in a galaxy that didn't understand your methods. Survival through adaptation, Chen agreed. It's what humans do best. We don't have the strongest bodies or the longest lifespans or the most advanced technology. What we have is the ability to look at a problem and ask, what if there's another way? Cathis's chromatophores flickered through rainbow patterns, the Vorn expression of genuine amusement. You came to the Galactic Council as a probationary species, and in 3 years, you've rewritten our fundamental understanding of survival. The traditionalists still argue that you violated protocols. And what do you think? Cathis looked out at the joint chambers, where representatives from dozens of species worked together using methods that combined 10,000 years of council wisdom with humanity's 3-year revolution. I think you proved that the laws of survival aren't written in stone. They're written by those willing to question them. And rewrite them when necessary, Chen added. And rewrite them when necessary, Cathis agreed. In the years that followed, the distinction between CIP methods and council doctrine gradually blurred. Some CIP principles were adopted universally. Some council traditions were preserved. New hybrids emerged. The galaxy didn't abandon its history, it built upon it. The Razak clans became the galaxy's most respected merchant fleet, their warrior culture channeled into competitive trading rather than raiding. Former pirates became traders, then entrepreneurs, then diplomats. Warlord Kraith eventually served as Cape's security coordinator, his strategic mind applied to protecting trade routes instead of raiding them. Humanity's probationary period officially ended after 5 years. By then, the question of whether they understood the laws of survival had become moot. They'd done something more important than understand existing laws. They'd proven that survival was about more than following rules. It was about knowing when to break them, when to rewrite them, and when to create entirely new ones. And in the process, humanity had taught the galaxy's oldest civilizations their most important lesson: that survival itself requires constant evolution, constant questioning, constant willingness to imagine that there might be a better way. The Galactic Council still existed. But it was no longer the only authority in the galaxy. Competition had forced improvement. Alternative perspectives had strengthened traditional methods. And humanity, the young species that had arrived with nothing but clever thinking and strategic flexibility, had secured not just their own survival but the evolution of galactic civilization itself. In her office, now much larger and filled with diplomatic awards from dozens of species, Ambassador Chen received a message from Earth's diplomatic corps. A new species had discovered faster-than-light travel and was requesting contact. The Corps wanted to know if Chen would consider serving as first contact ambassador. She smiled and accepted. After all, humanity had learned the hard way how to survive in an established galactic order. Now they could teach others the same lesson. Survival isn't about adapting to existing rules. Sometimes it's about rewriting them entirely.